The tire iron came down so hard it rang like a church bell. Jack Carter didn't shout. He didn't warn them. He swung once and the man with the pistol dropped to his knees, and Jack was already turning on the second one before the first hit the concrete. Behind him, a little girl was screaming 5 words over and over. "Help my mother! Help her!" Jack got there in time. He saved the woman bleeding out on that garage floor. And then the paramedics wiped the blood off her face, and Jack Carter went cold. Because he knew her. She was the woman who had signed the paper that destroyed his life. Before we go on, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels tonight. And if you believe ordinary people are still capable of extraordinary things, subscribe and stay with me to the end. Because what Jack did next is not what any man should have done. Jack Carter was 40 minutes late leaving the shop, and the only thing on his mind was a 6-year-old girl who wouldn't go to sleep until she heard his voice. He had the phone pinched between his shoulder and his ear while he scrubbed grease off his hands in the utility sink. "Lilybug, you brushed?" "I brushed. Both sides. Daddy, teeth don't have sides." "Teeth absolutely have sides. Teeth have 4 sides. That's science." She giggled, and something in his chest loosened the way it did every single night when he heard that sound. 9 years of his life had come apart in pieces. His career, his marriage, his name. And that giggle was the one piece that had never cracked. "Mrs. Alvarez says you're late," Lily said. "I know, baby. Mr. Delgado's transmission decided it hated me." "Did you fix it?" "I always fix it." "Then come home." 20 minutes. Jack said. "Don't let Mrs. Alvarez watch her murder shows in front of you." "She already did." "Of course she did." He hung up smiling. That was the last thing he did before the world changed. He hung up the phone, smiling in a repair shop on the east side of the city, with $11 in his wallet and a daughter waiting up for him. Ray came out of the office, rattling the shop keys. "Go home, Carter." "Going." "You've closed 6 nights straight. Rent's 7 nights a week, Ray." Ray looked at him the way he'd been looking at him for 2 years, like a man trying to work out a puzzle with a piece missing. "You know I got a buddy runs the diagnostics lab over on 5th. Real money. He'd take you in a heartbeat the way you read an engine. You ever think about—" "No," Jack said. "Jack, Ray." Jack pulled his jacket off the hook. "I fix cars. That's the whole biography. Lock up." He walked out into the rain. The parking garage was 4 blocks down because the shop's lot cost $80 a month, and Jack didn't have $80 a month. So he parked on the 3rd level of a public structure and walked the 4 blocks twice a day every day in whatever the sky decided to do. He was on the stairwell between 2 and 3 when he heard it. A sound that wasn't a car, wasn't a door, wasn't wind. It was a woman's voice, and it was cut off in the middle. Jack stopped with his hand on the rail. 9 years of training told him one thing, and it said it very clearly in a calm and reasonable voice. Keep walking. You have a daughter. You have a record that says you're the man who killed 11 people. You have nothing left to lose except the only thing that matters. Keep walking. Then the second sound came. Help my mother. A child. And every reasonable thing in Jack Carter's head, shut off like a breaker, had been thrown. He took the last flight of stairs 3 at a time.
Cannot proceed.
There were 3 of them. 2 working, 1 watching the ramp. The woman was down on the concrete beside an open car door, and she wasn't fighting anymore, and one of them had a knee in her back and her purse strap wrapped twice around his fist. The little girl was pressed into the gap between 2 parked cars, with both hands over her mouth, and she was still screaming through her fingers. The one by the ramp turned first. He had a pistol down along his thigh, and he raised it about halfway before he even really looked at Jack, a lazy, bored, this-is-nothing kind of half-raise. That was his mistake. He looked at Jack and saw a mechanic. 40-year-old coat, gray in the stubble, grease under the nails. A tired man walking to his car. He didn't see what Jack had been before he was a mechanic. "Wrong garage, Pop," the man said. Walk. Jack's hand had already closed on the tire iron sticking out of the tool bag on his shoulder. Let her go, Jack said. I said walk. Jack didn't argue with him. The tire iron came around in a flat arc and took the man's gun arm at the wrist, and the pistol went skittering across the concrete, and before the scream even got out of his mouth, Jack had driven a shoulder into his chest and put him into the side of a Buick hard enough to set the alarm off. Then, everything was noise. Hey! The second one came off the woman fast, and he was big, and he had a knife, and he came in the way. Men come in when they've only ever fought people who were already losing. Wide, loud, confident. Jack stepped inside it. He didn't think about it. That was the thing he'd never been able to explain to anyone afterward. He didn't decide. Something older than deciding took the wheel. He caught the wrist, turned it the wrong way against the joint, and the knife hit the ground, and Jack put an elbow through the man's jaw and felt something give. Get off him. The third one was on his back. Jack went down onto one knee with 240 pounds riding him, and a forearm came across his throat, and for about 3 seconds, Jack Carter genuinely believed he was going to die on the third level of a public parking garage over a woman he'd never met. He thought about Lily. That's what people never understand. They think in that moment you see your whole life. You don't. Jack saw one thing: a 6-year-old sitting up in bed waiting for a truck that was never going to pull into the driveway. And it made him violent. He got a hand under the arm at his throat, dropped his weight, and threw the man forward over his shoulder into the concrete. Then he was up. Then he had the tire iron again. The man rolled over and Jack was standing over him, and Jack's arm was back. Don't, the man said. Don't. The little girl was screaming. That's what stopped him. Not mercy, not law. The sound of a child screaming 4 feet away watching. Jack lowered his arm. Get up, he said. Get your friends. Get out. The man scrambled backward on his hands. The one with the ruined wrist was already halfway to the ramp, cradling it, sobbing curses. The big one staggered up, spitting blood. You're dead, the big one said thickly. You have no idea. You have no idea what you just... Then tell me, Jack said. The man stopped. And that was the first crack in the whole thing, that pause. That half-second where a mugger should have run, and instead he stood there in the rain light looking at Jack like he was trying to memorize a face for somebody else. You should have kept walking, man, he said quietly. Then they were gone, and the garage was just a concrete room with a woman dying in it. Jack turned around. She was on her side. There was more blood than there should have been for a purse snatch. A lot more. He went down on his knees beside her, and his hands were already moving, jacket open, palm flat pressure, and he found it under her ribs on the left side, and it was warm and it was pumping, and Jack Carter's stomach turned over because he had seen that exact thing before a long time ago, in a country he never talked about. Hey, look at me. Her eyes were rolling. No, look at me. He put his whole weight on the wound. You look at me right now. Her eyes found him. There you go, Jack said. There you go. Stay right there. What's your name? Her mouth moved. Nothing came out. Doesn't matter. Don't talk. Just don't close your eyes. The little girl was still wedged between the cars. Sweetheart, Jack said, and he made his voice go somewhere completely different. Soft, flat, calm, the voice he used at 2 a.m. when Lily had a nightmare. Sweetheart, I need you. Can you come here? She shook her head hard. I know you're scared. What's your name? Emma. Emma, I'm Jack. I fix cars. He kept both hands pressed down. Emma, is this your mom? She nodded. Okay, then I need you to be the bravest person in this whole building for about 2 minutes. Can you do that? I can't. You already did, Jack said. You already did the bravest part. You screamed. Nobody came except me, and I came because of you. You did that. You understand. You saved her. Now I just need the second half. Emma came out from between the cars. My phone's in my right pocket, Jack said. Both my hands are busy. Reach in and get it." She did. Her hands were shaking so bad, she dropped it and had to pick it up again. 911. Then hit the green button and hold it up to my ear. She did that too. 911. What's your emergency? Third level Wexler Street garage, north stairwell, Jack said. Female 40s, penetrating stab wound, left flank. She's conscious, but she's going out. Arterial. I've got pressure on it. Send everybody. A pause. The dispatcher's voice changed. Civilians don't say penetrating and arterial. Sir, are you medical? I was, Jack said. 9 minutes ago, I wasn't anything. Send the ambulance. The next 4 minutes were the longest of his life, and he spent them talking. Because that's what you do. You don't let them drift. You keep them tethered with your voice. You still with me, Blink? She blinked. Good. That's good. Emma, come here. Hold your mom's hand. Let her feel you. Emma knelt in the blood and took her mother's hand, and the woman's fingers closed on it weak. But they closed, and Jack watched something come back into her face that hadn't been there 10 seconds before. There it is, he thought. That's the thing that keeps people alive. It's not the pressure, it's the reason. Ma'am, I want you to listen to me, Jack said. Your daughter is right here. She's holding your hand. She's fine. Nobody touched her. You hear me? Nobody touched her. You did that. You kept her back, didn't you? That's why they got you and not her. The woman's eyes came all the way open then, and she nodded, barely, 1 inch. Yeah, Jack said, and his voice cracked, and he was surprised by that. Yeah, I figured. That's what a mother does. She said. Don't talk. My fault. Ma'am, I don't care whose fault it is. They knew my name. Jack went very still. Say that again. But her eyes rolled back, and the sirens came up the ramp, and then there was light everywhere, and hands everywhere, and somebody was pulling him off her, and he was fighting them. Actually fighting them until a paramedic shouted in his face, Sir, we've got her, let go. Jack let go. He sat back on the concrete with his hands up in the air like a man surrendering, and they were red to the wrist. And he watched 4 strangers do in 11 seconds what he'd been trying to do with 2 hands for 4 minutes. Emma was standing there, alone, in the middle of all of it. Jack got up. He didn't touch her. His hands weren't fit to touch a child with, but he crouched down in front of her. Emma, look at me. Not at her. At me. She looked. She's going to the hospital. That's a good thing. That's the best possible thing. And you're going with her, and I'm going to make sure of it. Are you coming? Jack opened his mouth. And that was the moment right there, that exact half-second, where he could have said no. Where he could have walked to his truck and gone home to his daughter and been a man who did a good thing once and never thought about it again. Yeah, Jack said. I'm coming. Peace. They put her on the gurney, and the second paramedic said, Somebody get her ID. We need a name for the trauma team. Emma said Hayes. Jack didn't react. It was a common name. Victoria Hayes? Emma said. My mom is Victoria Hayes. And Jack Carter stopped breathing. There are moments that reach back through your entire life and pull. Jack stood in a parking garage with a woman's blood drying on his hands, and the floor of the world went out from underneath him. Victoria Hayes. He knew that name the way you know your own social security number. He knew that signature. He had a photocopy of that signature in a shoebox on the top shelf of his closet, underneath his father's watch, and Lily's birth certificate, and he had not opened that box in 4 years, because the last time he did, he'd sat on the floor of his bedroom until 3 in the morning. V. Hayes, blue ink, bottom right of page 14. The page that said the incident at the Meridian plant was the direct result of engineering oversight by the site lead. The page that put 11 names in a column and put his name at the top of it. The page that took his career, his license, his marriage, his house, his mother's respect, and every night of unbroken sleep he'd ever had again. He'd never met her. Not once. That was the part that had always destroyed him. She'd never even looked at him. She had been a name on a letterhead in a building 30 floors above his life, and she had put a pen to a paper, and 11 families got a story about the man who killed their people, and Jack Carter got to spend 9 years learning how to fix transmissions, and he'd just spent 4 minutes with his hands inside her body, keeping her alive. The paramedic was saying something. Sir, you riding or not?" Jack looked at the gurney. He looked at Emma. She was maybe 8. She had her mother's face and none of her mother's power, and she was standing in the rainlight with her arms wrapped around herself, waiting to find out if she was going to be an orphan. And Jack thought about a shoebox on a closet shelf. And he thought, God help me. "I'm riding," he said. The hospital was a blur of fluorescent light and forms. They took Victoria through doors Jack wasn't allowed past. They put Emma in a plastic chair and gave her a juice box she didn't drink. A nurse tried 3 times to get Jack to wash his hands, and he kept saying, "In a minute," until finally the nurse just took him by the elbow and walked him to a sink like he was a child. He watched the water run red, then pink, then clear. He stared at his own face in the mirror over the sink for a long time. Then he went back out and sat down next to Emma 1 seat away, because that felt like the right amount of space. "Is she going to die?" Emma asked. "I don't know." Emma looked up at him. Kids always look up when you tell them the truth. It surprises them. "Everybody keeps saying she'll be fine," Emma said. "Yeah, well." Jack leaned forward on his knees. "Everybody's guessing. I don't guess." "Then what do you think?" Jack thought about it honestly. That's the only way to do it. "I think she's strong," he said. "I think she fought. I think she got you behind those cars before they got to her, and that means she was thinking clearly with a knife in her, and people who think clearly with a knife in them usually don't quit. So if I had to bet, and I'm not a betting man, I've got a kid, I'd bet on her." Emma processed that. "You have a kid." "Girl, 6, Lily." "Is she nice?" "She's a menace," Jack said. "She's the best thing on this planet." Emma almost smiled. It didn't make it, but it almost did. Then she said very quietly, "I ran." "What?" "When they came, Mom pushed me and I ran." Her chin was going. "I should have helped. I just ran and I screamed and I didn't." "Emma." Jack turned in the chair. "Emma, look at me. That scream is the only reason I'm sitting here. I was 1 floor down. If you'd stayed quiet and been brave and helpful, I'd have walked to my truck and driven home, and your mother would be dead on that floor right now. Do you understand what I'm telling you? You saved her, not me. I was just the guy who heard it." She stared at him. "That's not true," she said. "It's completely true. Ask anybody." And that was the first moment Emma Hayes cried, really cried ugly and loud the way kids do. And Jack Carter, 35-years-old mechanic, felon-adjacent, disgraced engineer, sat 1 seat away from the daughter of the woman who ruined him and let her cry into his shoulder because there was nobody else in the building to do it. The detective showed up at 11:40. Name was Ruiz. Tired eyes, cheap coat, the look of a man who'd already worked 11 hours. "Mr. Carter, walk me through it." Jack walked him through it. Flat. Factual. No adjectives. Ruiz wrote about 4 words down. 3 men, Ruiz said. 3. You put down 3 men with a tire iron. 2. The third one put himself down. Uh-huh. Ruiz looked up. "Mr. Carter, you understand how this reads, right? Woman gets grabbed in a garage. Random Good Samaritan appears out of nowhere and just so happens to be able to disarm an armed man and identify an arterial bleed." Jack said nothing. "So I gotta ask, what did you do before you fixed cars?" "Look me up," Jack said. "You will anyway." Ruiz's pen stopped. "Yeah," he said. "I did, on the drive over." Silence. "Meridian. Ruiz said. Yeah. You were the site lead. Yeah. 11 dead. Jack's jaw worked. Yeah. Ruiz sat back and looked at him for a long moment, and Jack watched it happen, the same thing that had happened in every room he'd walked into for 9 years. The recalculation. The way people's faces change when the file loads. You know who she is, Ruiz said. It wasn't a question. I do now. You didn't know in the garage. I didn't know until her daughter said her name in the back of the ambulance. Ruiz tapped the pen against his knee. And you still rode in? Yes. Why? Jack looked down at his hands. They were clean now, and they wouldn't stop shaking, and they hadn't shaken once while they were dirty. Funny how that works. Because that little girl asked me to, Jack said. Ruiz didn't write that down either. He just sat there. Then he said something Jack didn't expect. Mr. Carter, purse was still on the ground, wallet in it, 2 credit cards, 400 cash, a Rolex on her wrist. He let that sit. You want to tell me what kind of mugging leaves the Rolex? Jack raised his head slowly. They knew her name, he said. Say again. She said it. On the floor. Before she went out. She said they knew my name. Ruiz stared at him, and for the first time all night, the detective's tired eyes were not tired at all. Jack got home at 2:15 in the morning. Mrs. Alvarez was asleep in the recliner with the TV on. He paid her, apologized, walked her to her door across the hall, came back and stood in the middle of his own living room in a jacket with somebody else's blood on the sleeve and didn't move for a full minute. Then he went and looked at his daughter. Lily was sideways in the bed as always, one leg out, mouth open, dead to the world. Jack stood in the doorway with his hand on the frame and watched her breathe. I almost didn't come home tonight, he thought. I almost died in a garage for Victoria Hayes. He went to the closet. He got the shoebox down and sat on the floor of his bedroom with his back against the bed exactly the way he had 4 years ago, and he took the lid off. The photocopy was on top. It had gone yellow. Page 14. Bottom right. V. Hayes. Jack looked at that signature for a long, long time. He looked at it the way a man looks at a scar. And here's the thing nobody ever believed afterward. Not the reporters, not the lawyers, not the people who made him into a hero on the news. They all wanted him to say he felt righteous, that he felt vindicated, that in that moment he felt God had handed him something. What Jack Carter actually felt sitting on his bedroom floor at 2:40 in the morning with his hands still shaking was this. He could have let her die. Nobody would ever have known. He could have stayed on the second-floor landing for 90 seconds. 90 seconds. He could have counted to 90 and then walked up and found a dead woman and been the man who called it in. Nobody on this earth would have known the difference. And some part of him, some small, black, honest part he'd never admitted to anyone, had wanted to. For about a half a second on those stairs, before he knew who she was, keep walking. And he hadn't. He put the lid back on the box. He put the box back on the shelf. He washed his face. He got into bed and stared at the ceiling and did not sleep. At 6:20 a.m., his phone rang. Unknown number. Carter. Mr. Carter, this is Nurse Patel at St. Anne's. Are you the individual who came in with Victoria Hayes? Jack sat up. Is she? She's out of surgery. She's stable. She's asking for you. Jack was quiet for a second. Ma'am, she doesn't know who I am. Mr. Carter? A pause on the line. She knows exactly who you are. She's been saying your name for the last 20 minutes. She said, and I'm quoting her, she said, "Tell Jack Carter I need to see him before I lose the nerve." Jack looked across the hallway at his daughter's open door. Mr. Carter, are you there? Yeah, he said. I'm here. Will you come? Jack closed his eyes. Somewhere across the city, in a room full of machines, a woman who had never met him and had destroyed him anyway, was lying awake at dawn, saying his name. Tell her I'll be there at 8, Jack said. 8 o'clock came the way bad news comes early and without asking. Jack Carter stood outside room 411 at St. Anne's with a coffee he hadn't drunk and a jacket he'd washed twice and still couldn't get clean at the cuff. He had dropped Lily at school at 7:40. He had told her he had an errand. He had lied to his daughter for the first time in 2 years, and it sat in his stomach like a swallowed stone. A nurse came out of the room and looked at him. "Mr. Carter." "Yeah, she's awake. She's on a lot of things, so if she doesn't make sense, don't take it personally." "Ma'am, nothing about the last 12 hours has made sense." The nurse almost smiled, and then she didn't, and she held the door. Jack walked in. Victoria Hayes was smaller than her signature. That was the first thing he thought, and it was a stupid thing to think, but it was true. For 9 years, she had been a name on a document the size of a cathedral. And here she was, gray as paper tubes, in her arm hair, matted flat on one side, 60 pounds lighter than the woman he'd built in his head. She turned her face toward him, and Jack watched her recognize him, and it wasn't the recognition of a woman remembering the man who saved her. It was the recognition of a woman looking at a photograph she'd seen 100 times in a file. "You're him," she said. "Yeah." "You're Jack Carter." "Yeah." Victoria Hayes closed her eyes, and something moved across her face that Jack had no name for. "Well," she said, "that's the joke, isn't it?" Jack didn't sit down. He stood at the foot of the bed with his hands in his jacket pockets, and he waited because he'd learned in 9 years that the person who talks first in a room like this loses something. "They told me a mechanic pulled me out," she said. "Nobody told me the mechanic's name until 4 in the morning. I made them show me the report twice. I thought it was a mistake." It wasn't. No. She swallowed, and it clearly hurt. No, it wasn't. "Where's Emma?" The question surprised her. She actually flinched. "Downstairs. Cafeteria. My assistant's with her." "Is she eating?" "What?" "Is she eating?" Jack said. "Because she didn't eat anything last night. Not the juice, not the crackers. She held that juice box for 4 hours and she never opened it. Kids do that when they're waiting to find out if the world's over. So somebody needs to make her eat." Victoria Hayes stared at him. And then, without any warning at all, she started to cry. Not a graceful CEO cry. A wrecked, gulping, humiliated cry with a chest wound and a drain in her side, and every heave of it must have felt like being stabbed again, and she did it anyway. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Ma'am, you don't understand. Ma'am, don't do that. You're going to pull something." "I signed it," Victoria said. The room went silent except for the machine. "I signed it," she said again. "Page 14. I signed it in a conference room in 11 seconds. I didn't read it. I want you to know that. I want you to know exactly what it was because everybody's going to tell you. I agonized. I didn't agonize. I signed 40 documents that morning and yours was number 29 and I never looked at your name." Jack's hands were still in his pockets. They had closed into fists in there, and he couldn't seem to open them. "You want to know what I remember about the worst day of your life?" Victoria said. "Nothing. I remember nothing. I've been trying since 4 a.m. I can't even remember what room I was in." 9 years. 9 years of imagining her, and this was it. This was the whole thing. He wasn't a villain's victim. He was clerical. "Say something," she said. "What do you want me to say?" "Anything. Scream at me. I would prefer it." "I bet you would," Jack said quietly. She stopped. "Yeah," he said. "You'd love that. You'd love if I came in here and turned it all over on you and told you what you cost me, because then you'd have paid. Then you could lie here and hurt and feel like the ledger's clean and go back to your building." He shook his head slowly. "I'm not doing that for you, ma'am. You don't get to feel better this morning." Victoria Hayes had run a company with 9,000 employees. Nobody had spoken to her like that in 20 years. She didn't argue. She said, "That's fair." And that was the moment Jack Carter realized this was going to be much, much harder than hating her. 8:10 the door opened. Emma came in at a dead run and stopped so hard her shoes squeaked, and she looked at her mother, and then she looked at Jack, and her whole face broke open. "You came back." "Told you I would." "Everybody says stuff." "Not everybody," Jack said. Emma went to the bed and grabbed her mother's hand with both of hers and didn't say anything at all, and Victoria put her free hand on her daughter's head, and Jack looked at the wall, because there are things you don't watch. Behind Emma, a man came in. Thin, expensive 45, the kind of man whose watch does the talking. He had a leather folder under his arm at 8 in the morning at a trauma ward. "Victoria," he said. "Thank God." "Marcus, the board's already—" He stopped. He'd seen Jack. "I'm sorry, who is this?" "This is the man who kept me from bleeding out on a garage floor," Victoria said. Marcus turned and put his hand out, and his smile arrived about a half-second late. "Marcus Webb, Chief Operating Officer. Mr. Jack looked at the hand. He'd been in enough rooms with enough men to know a thing when he saw it, and what he saw was that Marcus Webb had walked into this room already knowing his name. "Carter," Jack said. And Marcus Webb's smile did not move a millimeter, and that was how Jack knew. Because a man who hears Carter in Victoria Hayes's hospital room after the Meridian disaster does something with his face. Anything. A blink, a twitch, something. Marcus Webb did nothing at all, which meant he'd already done his reacting somewhere else in private hours ago. "Mr. Carter," Webb said warmly, "we owe you more than we can say." "You don't owe me anything." "Nonsense. The company will want to—" "The company," Jack said, "should stay away from me." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Victoria's eyes moved between them. "Marcus," she said, "give us the room." "Victoria, the board meets at 11, and with you incapacitated the succession clause." "Marcus, the room." He went. He smiled the whole way out, and the door clicked, and Jack watched it click. "He knew my name," Jack said. "What?" "Before you said it. He knew it." Jack turned. "Ma'am, you said something in the garage. Do you remember?" "I don't remember anything in the garage." "You said they knew my name." Victoria Hayes went absolutely still. 8:30 in the morning, and a machine beeped somewhere, and neither of them breathed. "Say that again," she said. "You were going out. You had maybe 15 seconds of consciousness left, and you spent them telling me that. People don't waste their last 15 seconds. Whatever you said with them was the most important thing in your head." "I don't—" "They left the Rolex," Jack said. Victoria's hand went to her wrist. It was still there. "400 cash in the purse," Jack said. "2 credit cards, watch worth more than my truck. They put a knife in you and left every single thing worth taking. Ma'am, that wasn't a robbery. That was a job." "You're wrong." "Am I?" "Yes, you're wrong because that's insane." "Then why did the big one stop?" Jack said. "I had a tire iron on him. He should have run." He stood there and looked at me like he was memorizing me, and he said, "You should have kept walking, man." Not, "You're dead." Not, "I'll find you." You should have kept walking. That's not a threat. That's a warning. He was warning me off something. Victoria Hayes stared at the ceiling for a long time. "There's a file," she said. "What file?" "No." She shut her eyes. "No. I'm not doing this to you. I've done enough to you." "Ma'am." "Do you understand what I'd be doing?" Her voice cracked. "You have a daughter. You said her name in the hallway last night. The nurse told me you asked if you'd make it home before she woke up. You have a daughter, Mr. Carter, and I have already taken 9 years from you, and I am not going to sit here and pull you into Victoria." It was the first time he'd used her name. She stopped. "Tell me about the file," Jack said. 8:41. 6 weeks ago, she said slowly, "I got an envelope. No return address. Sent to my house, not the office. Inside was 1 page. A maintenance log from the Meridian plant, dated 11 days before the incident." Jack's blood went cold. "There is no maintenance log from 11 days before," he said. "I requested it 4 times. It didn't exist. The company said the system had a gap. It existed, Victoria said. What was on it? A pressure differential flag on line 3, handwritten, initialed. She turned her head to look at him. And a note underneath from a shift supervisor saying he'd escalated it twice and been told to leave it. Jack sat down. He hadn't meant to. His legs just stopped. I flagged that valve, he said. 9 days out. I put it in writing. I sent it to corporate. They told me my report never arrived and I couldn't prove it because the server had a gap, Victoria said. Yeah. Mr. Carter, in the last 6 weeks I have quietly pulled every record from that quarter. Legal doesn't know. The board doesn't know. I used my own attorney personally out of pocket. She was breathing too fast now, and the machine was starting to complain. There are 900 pages, and every single time the trail gets close to the safety authorization, the document is either missing or amended or signed by somebody who no longer works there. Who signed the amendments? That's the thing? She said. Nobody. They're initialed. Just initials. What initials? Victoria Hayes looked at the door Marcus Webb had walked out of. MW, she said. The machine beeped once hard, and a nurse's head came around the door, and Victoria waved her off, and the room went quiet again, and Jack Carter sat in a plastic chair and felt 9 years reorganize themselves in his skull like a bone being set. You put this together 6 weeks ago, he said. I put pieces together. And 3 men with a knife found you in a garage last night. Yes. And left the Rolex. Victoria didn't answer. Say it, Jack said. I don't want to say it. Say it anyway. You owe me 1 sentence, ma'am. 9 years, 1 sentence. Victoria Hayes closed her eyes. They weren't trying to rob me, she said. They were trying to stop me. 9 o'clock. Jack stood outside in the corridor with his hands on the back of his neck and stared at the floor tiles. Detective Ruiz found him there. Carter. Detective. You look like a man who's had a morning. I've had a decade, Jack said. Ruiz leaned on the wall beside him and pulled out a notebook that had clearly been through a war. So, I ran the 3 of them. We picked up the one with the wrist at 6 a.m. at a walk-in clinic in Ridgeway, exactly where I said he'd be because guys always go to the clinic. Kid's 26, named Dane Pruitt. Priors for assault possession, nothing above a misdemeanor since 22. Okay. Guess how much cash he had in his sock? I don't want to guess. $9,000, Ruiz said. In hundreds. Bank strapped. Jack looked at him. Yeah, Ruiz said. Muggers don't prepay. He lawyered up in 4 minutes. Kid with 3 misdemeanors, no money, no job, and a public defender's number in his phone, and instead a guy in a $2,000 suit walks into my station at 7:15 in the morning and says he's Mr. Pruitt's counsel. Ruiz flipped the notebook shut. Carter, I've been doing this 19 years. Street kids don't have retained counsel show up before breakfast. Who's the lawyer? Firm called Aldrich and Kane. Never heard of them. You wouldn't have, Ruiz said. They don't do criminal. They do corporate. Jack turned his head slowly. They do corporate, he repeated. Yeah. Who's their client? Ruiz looked at him for a long, level moment. You already know, he said. 9:20. Jack called Ray from the parking lot. I need the day. Jack, you've never taken a day. I know. You dying? Maybe, Jack said and hung up. 10:15. He was standing in his own kitchen with the shoebox open on the table, and every document he'd kept for 9 years spread across it like a crime scene, which is exactly what it was. He read page 14 again. He read it the way he hadn't let himself read it since the day it ended him, not as a wound, but as an engineer. And 40 minutes in he found it. It was so small he'd looked past it 100 times. The report cited his site log timestamps to the minute. Every entry, down to the second, except one. Entry 41. The valve inspection. The report said 1406. His log said 1406. But his log said 14:06 on a Tuesday, and the report had it on a Wednesday. Someone had moved a day. One single day buried in 900 pages, and it changed everything because on Tuesday the flag was raised 9 days before the incident, which meant corporate had 9 days to act. And on Wednesday, it was 8. And 8 days was inside the mandatory response window. 8 days meant the flag arrived too late for anyone to be liable. Jack Carter sat down on his kitchen floor with a piece of paper in his hand and started laughing, and the laughing turned into something else about 10 seconds in, and he put his fist against his mouth and made no sound at all so the neighbors wouldn't hear. 9 years. Somebody had moved one day on a calendar and taken his entire life. 11:05 his phone rang. Unknown number. Carter. Silence. Breathing. Hello? Mr. Carter. A man's voice. Calm. Pleasant. How's Lily? Jack didn't move. She's got the little green backpack, the voice said. Dinosaurs on it. She waves at the crossing guard. Every morning. Same wave. Cute kid. Every muscle in Jack's body turned to iron. Say another word about my daughter, Jack said very quietly, and I will find you. Mr. Carter, I'm not threatening you. I'm being considerate. Last night you walked into something you didn't understand, and you did a good thing, and nobody blames you for it. But it's over now. She's alive. You're a hero. Go be one. Fix cars. Wave at the crossing guard. Who is this? Somebody who read your file, the voice said. Somebody who knows you've already lost everything once, and knows that a man who's already lost everything has exactly one thing left. A pause. You get to keep it, Mr. Carter. That's the offer. You get to keep her. The line went dead. Jack stood in his kitchen for exactly 4 seconds. Then he was out the door. 11:40. He was in the front office of Roosevelt Elementary, with his hands flat on the counter, telling a woman named Denise that he needed his daughter right now, and Denise was telling him it wasn't a scheduled early release, and Jack was about 11 seconds from doing something that would have ended with police. Ma'am, please? Mr. Carter, I need a reason. My reason is that a man called me 40 minutes ago and described her backpack. Denise stopped typing. Then Denise stood up and went and got Lily herself. Lily came around the corner with the green backpack and the dinosaurs, and she saw her father's face, and her own face changed, because kids read us like we're written in 12-point font. Daddy! Jack went down on one knee and put his arms around her and held on maybe 2 seconds too long. Hey, Bug. Am I in trouble? No, you're not in trouble. He pulled back and made himself smile. We're having an adventure day. On a Tuesday. Best day for it. She wasn't buying it. She was 6, and she wasn't buying it. And Jack saw the exact moment she decided to let him have it anyway, and that nearly took his legs out from under him. Okay, Lily said, but I get to pick lunch. You get to pick lunch. 12:50, he had her at Mrs. Alvarez's with the door locked and the number for Detective Ruiz written on the back of a receipt. Rosa. Anybody knocks anybody you don't open. You call that number. Jack, what is happening? I'll tell you when I know. Then he drove back to St. Anne's, and he did not obey a single speed limit on the way. 1:30, room 411. Victoria was sitting up. She had a laptop across her knees that she absolutely should not have had, and her lawyer on speaker, and the color had come back into her face, and Jack recognized what he was looking at because he'd seen it in himself once. She had stopped being a victim and started being a problem. Get out, Jack said to the room. The lawyer's voice on the phone said, Excuse me, who is? Hang up, Jack said. Victoria looked at him. Then she reached over and hung up. What happened? She said. They called me. Who called you? Somebody who knows what my daughter's backpack looks like. Victoria Hayes went white to the lips. No, she said. Yeah. No! She was trying to get up. She actually tried to get up with a drain in her side, and Jack had to put a hand on her shoulder. This is what I said. This is exactly what I said. I said I wouldn't pull you into... You didn't pull me in, Jack said. I walked up the stairs. Mr. Carter. Jack. She stopped. My name's Jack, he said. You've been calling me Mr. Carter all morning like I'm a deposition. I've had my hands inside you. Call me Jack. Victoria stared at him, and then, God help them both. She laughed. One horrible, painful bark of a laugh that made her grab her side. Jack, she said. Better. Jack, you have to walk away. Yeah, Jack said. Everybody keeps telling me that. He pulled the folded photocopy out of his jacket and put it on the blanket in front of her. What's this? Page 14, entry 41. Jack, I've read this file 100. Read the date. She read it. 1406, she said. Read the day. Victoria Hayes read the day. Jack watched her read it 3 times. He watched her lips move. He watched a woman who had signed her name to a lie in 11 seconds finally, 9 years later, actually read the page. It's Wednesday, she whispered. It was Tuesday, Jack said. I filed it on a Tuesday. I filed it at 14:06 on a Tuesday because I remember the shift change was at 2, and I remember being annoyed about it. Somebody moved it one day. Why would... Because Tuesday is 9 days, Jack said. 9 days is inside the mandatory corporate response window. 9 days means somebody at corporate got a flag about a pressure differential on a line that killed 11 people and sat on it. 8 days means the flag was late, and it's on the site lead. On you. On me. Victoria Hayes put her hand over her mouth. They didn't lie about what happened, Jack said. That's what took me 9 years to see. They didn't have to. Everything in that report is true. Every measurement, every number, every word. They moved one day. That's... Her voice was gone. That's surgical. That's an accountant, Jack said. That's somebody who understood that the best lie is 99% true. And Victoria Hayes, who had built a career on knowing exactly which man in a room was the dangerous one, said the name before Jack did. Marcus. 2:10 in the afternoon. He was VP of Operations then, Victoria said. She was talking fast now, and her hands were shaking, and she didn't seem to notice. He handled the internal review. He handed me the summary. He stood next to me while I signed it. Jack, he put the pen in my hand. You remember that? I remember that. She looked up. I told you I don't remember anything about that day. That's a lie. I remember one thing. I remember him saying, "It's clean, Vic. Sign it. We've got a funeral to get to." The room was very quiet. He used the funerals, Victoria said. He used 11 dead men to make me hurry. And that was when Jack Carter, for the first time in 9 years, felt something other than shame about the Meridian plant. He felt rage. Clean, structural, load-bearing rage, the kind you can build on. Okay, he said. Okay. Where's the file? Jack and Victoria. He leaned in. They put a knife in you, and they called me about my daughter. There is no version of this where I walk away and my kid's safe. The only way she's safe is if this ends. So, where is the file? Victoria Hayes was silent for a long moment. Safe deposit box, she said. First Meridian Trust, downtown. Jack blinked. Say the name of the bank again. First Meridian. She stopped. She heard it. Oh God. Who set up that box? Victoria's face was the color of the sheets. Marcus, she whispered. Marcus set up my personal banking 15 years ago when I made CEO. He set up everything. 2:14 p.m. Jack was already standing. Call them, he said. Right now. Call the bank and ask when the box was last accessed. Jack? Call them. She called them. It took 4 minutes, and a manager and a security question about her mother's maiden name, and Jack stood at the window with his back to her the entire time and did not breathe. Then Victoria said, "This is Victoria Hayes, box 419. I need the access log for the last 30 days. A pause. A long pause. I see, Victoria said. Another pause. And who authorized that? Jack turned around. Victoria Hayes was looking at the wall with an expression Jack had never seen on a human face before. Not fear, not anger, but the terrible blank calm of somebody watching the last floor drop out. "Thank you," she said and hung up. "When?" Jack said. "Yesterday," Victoria said. 4:15 in the afternoon. Jack did the math, and his stomach went through the floor. "That's 4 hours before the garage," he said. "Yes." "They emptied the box first." "Yes." "Then they came for you." "Yes." Victoria Hayes set the phone down on the blanket very carefully, the way you set down something that might go off. "Jack," she said, "they already have it. Everything I found. 900 pages. It's gone. There's nothing left. There's no evidence. There's no case. There's nothing but a woman in a hospital bed with a stab wound and a story." And Jack Carter stood in the middle of room 411 and started to smile. It was not a good smile. "Why are you smiling?" Victoria said. "Why in God's name are you smiling?" "Because they made a mistake," Jack said. "What mistake?" "They took the copy," Jack said, "that they knew about." Victoria stared at him. 9 years ago, Jack said slowly. "Before they walked me out of that building, before they took my badge, before the lawyers, before any of it, I was a site lead with a bad feeling. And a site lead with a bad feeling does one thing, Victoria. One thing. Every single time." "What?" "He keeps his own log." Victoria Hayes's mouth opened. "Paper," Jack said. "Handwritten. Every entry, every shift 9 years old in my own hand, with my own dates in a fireproof box in a storage unit in Ridgeway that I've been paying $41 a month for since 2017 because I could never make myself throw it away." The machine was beeping. Neither of them heard it. "You have the original," she said. "I have the Tuesday," Jack said. 2:22 in the afternoon, Jack Carter's phone rang. Unknown number. He looked at it. He looked at Victoria. He answered, and that same calm, pleasant voice said, "Mr. Carter, Unit 208, Ridgeway Self-Storage, $41 a month." Jack didn't move. "You didn't think we'd know," the voice said gently. "Jack, we've had a man on that unit for 6 weeks, since the day she opened the envelope." Silence. "We were never worried about the bank," the voice said. "We were worried about you." And then the voice said the thing that stopped Jack Carter's heart in his chest. "Now put Victoria on. Somebody wants to talk to her about her daughter." Jack Carter held the phone against his ear and did not say a word. "Mr. Carter, you still with me?" "I'm here." "Put Victoria on." "No." A pause on the line. Just a beat. But Jack heard it and he filed it because a man who pauses is a man who wasn't given a script for this. "Jack." "Emma's in the cafeteria," Jack said. "3rd floor. There's a woman with her named Denise Park. She's Victoria's assistant, and there are 2 sheriff's deputies on that floor because there was a stabbing last night. So whatever you think you're holding, you're not holding it yet." Jack put her on the phone. "Say her name." Silence. "Say the kid's name," Jack said. "You've been describing my daughter's backpack all day, so say this one. What's her name?" The line went dead. Jack lowered the phone. Victoria was staring at him with both hands flat on the blanket. "They don't have her," Jack said. "Not yet. They're fishing." "How do you—" Because he hung up. Jack was already moving. "A man holding your kid doesn't hang up. A man holding your kid puts her on and lets you hear her breathe. That's the whole product. He didn't have the product." 2:26 in the afternoon. Jack hit the corridor at a walk that turned into a run by the 2nd door. He took the stairs. 2 flights. He came out on 3, and the cafeteria was right there, and he saw the table before he saw anything else, and there was a woman in a gray blazer sitting at it alone with a tray and a phone, and there was no little girl anywhere. Jack crossed 40 feet in about 6 seconds. "Where is she?" Denise Park looked up. "Excuse me." "Emma, where is Emma?" "She's—" Denise turned and her face changed. She was right there. She was at the vending machine. How long? 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Which machine? She pointed, and Jack was gone. The vending machines were around a corner in a little alcove, and there was nobody there. And there was a dollar bill on the floor, and the door at the end of the alcove said, Stairwell B, and it was still swinging. Jack went through it so hard it hit the wall. 227. He was one flight down when he heard her, not screaming. That's what he'd remember later when he couldn't sleep. She wasn't screaming. She was saying in a small, polite voice, I don't want to. I don't want to, please. I don't want to. The way a kid says it to an adult, they've been raised to obey. That sound did something to Jack Carter that no scream ever could have. He came around the landing. There were two of them. One had Emma by the upper arm and was walking her down like a father hurrying a slow child, which was smart, which was professional, because from a distance, that's all it looks like. The second one was behind hands, empty eyes up. The second one saw Jack. Hey, Jack didn't slow down. He went off the last 4 steps and took the rear man in the chest with his shoulder and put him into the cinder block, and he heard the air leave the guy like a tire. And then Jack's hands were on him, and Jack hit him once in the jaw, and the man's eyes rolled, and he slid down the wall. The one holding Emma turned. He let go of her arm and reached under his coat. Emma, Jack said, down. She dropped like a stone. 6-year-olds and 8-year-olds are the same in that one way they hit the floor when a grown man uses that voice. The gun came out. Jack was already inside it. He caught the wrist with his left hand and pushed it up and away, and the shot went into the ceiling, and the whole stairwell went white with noise, and Jack drove his forehead into the man's face, and felt the nose go, and kept driving, kept pushing that gun hand up and back, until the man's shoulder hit the rail, and the gun was over the rail, and Jack twisted the wrist against itself. The gun dropped 4 stories. Then Jack hit him, and hit him, and hit him. And Emma was screaming now, finally actually screaming, and it was that sound that reached in and grabbed Jack's arm on the 4th swing and stopped it in the air. He stood there with his fist cocked back and a man's shirt in his other hand and his whole body shaking. Then he let go, and the man went down, and Jack turned around, and Emma Hayes was sitting on the concrete with her back against the wall and her hands over her ears. He knelt down about 3 feet away. He didn't touch her. His hands weren't fit for it. Emma? Nothing. Emma, it's Jack. Her eyes came up. You okay? Anything hurt? She shook her head. Okay. He let out a breath he'd been holding since 2:22. Okay, good. He said, Emma whispered, he said he was taking me to see my mom. I know. He knew her name. He said, your mom, Victoria. So Her chin went. So I went. I went with him. Emma. I just went. Emma, look at me. Jack got down lower. You're 8 years old, and a grown man in a hospital said your mother's name. There is not one adult on this earth who would have done different. Not one. You hear me. That is not your fault. That's their trick. Grown men made that trick specifically so it would work on kids exactly like you. She stared at him. Then she came off that wall and into him so hard it nearly knocked him over, and Jack Carter put his arms around somebody else's daughter in a stairwell with 2 unconscious men and a bullet hole in the ceiling, and he closed his eyes. 2:31. Detective Ruiz got there in 9 minutes, and the hospital was full of uniforms in 11. He stood over the 2 men on the floor with his hands on his hips. Carter. Detective, you know what my day looked like when I woke up? It looked like paperwork. Ruiz crouched and pulled a wallet out of the first man's coat. It did not look like a discharged firearm in a stairwell at St. Anne's. He opened the wallet, and Ruiz went very quiet. What? Jack said. Ruiz held up a laminated card. Private security license, he said. Active. Issued 11 months ago. So he's insured, Ruiz said. Which means he's employed. which means somewhere there's a company with his name on a payroll and a W-2 with a 9-digit tax ID on it, and Jack, guys like this don't get W-2s from guys like this. Jack looked at him. Who's the employer? Jack said. Ruiz turned the card over. He read it twice. Then he said a word Jack couldn't repeat to a child. Kestrel Risk Solutions, Ruiz said. I don't know what that is. Neither do I. But I'm gonna know in an hour. 2:50. Jack went back up to 411 with Emma's hand in his, because she would not let go, and he had stopped trying to make her. Victoria was standing. She was on her feet holding the IV pole gray as ash, and a nurse was shouting at her, and she did not appear to hear any of it. Then she saw Emma. Jack had seen a lot of things in his life. He had seen a plant go up. He had seen a man die in a helicopter. He had seen his wife pack a suitcase. He had never seen anything like Victoria Hayes going down onto her knees on a hospital floor with a drain in her side because her daughter walked through a door. Emma hit her like a truck. Victoria made a sound Jack had no word for. I'm okay, Emma was saying. Mom, I'm okay, Jack came. Victoria looked up over her daughter's shoulder. And she looked at Jack Carter, and her whole face was wet, and she said one word. Twice. Jack didn't answer. Twice, she said again. You've done it twice in 18 hours. Get back in the bed, Jack said. 3:15. Ruiz came in with a laptop and a look on his face and shut the door with his heel. Kestrel Risk Solutions, he said. Incorporated in Delaware. 4 employees on paper. No website. No office. Corporate registration lists 1 officer of record. Who? Victoria said. A guy named Peter Ellery, Ruiz said. Ever heard of him? No. Yeah, nobody has. Because Peter Ellery is a 71-year-old retiree in Boca Raton who's never heard of Kestrel either. I called him. He's real confused. Ruiz turned the laptop around. But here's the thing. Kestrel's been paid 9 times in the last 14 months. Same payer. 1 line item over and over coded as consulting. Jack leaned in. He read the payer, and the room tilted. That's not possible, Victoria said. Ma'am, that's not possible. That's my company. That's an internal cost center. That's... She stopped. Yeah, Ruiz said quietly. That's operations, Victoria said. Yeah. That's Marcus's budget. Ma'am, I want to be very careful here. I've got a shell corp and 9 wire transfers. I don't have a man. Any of 40 people could sign off in a cost center that size. 40 people can sign, Victoria said. 1 person approves. 3:22. And then Victoria Hayes did something that Jack would think about for the rest of his life. She picked up her phone and called Marcus Webb. Victoria. Ruiz started. She put a finger up. 2 rings. Victoria. Webb's voice warm as a fireplace right out of the speaker. Thank God. How are you feeling? Marcus. The board pushed to 2. I've held them off. You don't need to. Marcus. They took Emma. A pause. And Jack, standing 4 feet away, with his arms folded and his eyes closed, listening the way he'd once listened to engines, heard it. He heard the exact length of that pause. They what? Webb said. 2 men, in the stairwell, 20 minutes ago. Victoria, my God, is she? She's fine. A man stopped them. What man? And Victoria Hayes looked directly at Jack and said, I don't know. Some stranger. He ran. The pause on the line this time was longer. He ran, Webb repeated. He didn't leave a name. Victoria, that's... Webb's voice did something, just for a syllable. Just a hitch. That's very lucky. Isn't it? Have you called the police? Of course I've called the police. Good. Good. Listen to me. You need to get out of that hospital. Tonight. It isn't secure. I'll send our people. Your people. Corporate security. Victoria, please. I'll have a car and 2 men there by 6. We'll move you and Emma somewhere safe until this is contained. Victoria Hayes closed her eyes. "Thank you, Marcus," she said. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "Don't say that. Just sit tight. 6 o'clock. She hung up, and then she threw the phone across the room so hard it broke against the wall. Nobody said anything for about 5 seconds. "You lied to him," Ruiz said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I've watched that man lie for 15 years, Victoria said, "and I have never once heard him ask a question he didn't already know the answer to, and he just asked me what man." Ruiz sat down slowly. "He didn't know Jack was there," Victoria said. "He didn't know his own people failed. Nobody's called him, which means he isn't running this from the top." She looked up. "He's a middleman." 3:30. That was when Jack Carter finally said the thing he'd been holding since 2:22. "He's coming at 6, he said. "Yes. With 2 men in a car, to take you and Emma somewhere safe." Victoria didn't answer. "Victoria." "I know what it is," she said. "I'm not stupid." "Then say it." "If I get in that car," Victoria said, "I don't get out of it." And Emma, who nobody had remembered, was in the room. Emma, who was 8 and who had been sitting on the end of the bed the entire time with her arms around her own knees, said, "Then don't get in the car." Everyone turned. "Baby." "Don't get in the car," Emma said again, and her voice cracked right down the middle. "Mom, don't get in the car." Victoria Hayes reached for her daughter, and Emma pulled back. "You always get in this car," Emma said. "You always go. Every time somebody says something's important, you go, and I sit with Denise and I eat at the counter, and you come home when I'm asleep." She was sobbing now. "And last night I thought you were dead, and the only person there was a man who fixes cars." Nobody moved. Nobody moved for a long, long time. And Victoria Hayes, CEO, 9,000 employees, 40 documents a morning, sat on a hospital bed and took that with her whole chest because she had earned every syllable of it. "You're right," she said. Emma blinked. "You're right," Victoria said again. "About all of it. And I'm not going to stand here and promise you I'm different now because you'd know I was lying because I've promised you things before." She reached out again, and this time Emma let her. "So I'm not going to promise. I'm just going to not get in the car." 3:41. Ruiz stood up. "Okay," he said. "I'm calling it in. This is over my head as of about an hour ago. Wire fraud crossing state lines, a Shell Corp attempted kidnapping of a minor, and a 9-year-old federal safety investigation with falsified documents." He was already dialing. "This is a bureau problem now." "How long?" Jack said. "To get an agent here, 90 minutes. To get an agent who can do something." Ruiz stopped dialing. "Realistically," he said, "warrants subpoenas a U.S. attorney who's willing to touch a Fortune 500 weeks. Months." "He's coming at 6, Jack said. "I know." "In 2 hours and 19 minutes. "Carter, I know." "So what do we do until then?" Jack said. "Sit here and hope." And Ruiz, 19 years on the job, looked at the floor. "There's no case," he said quietly. "That's the truth. Everything Victoria found is in somebody's shredder. All I've got is a shell company and a hunch, and Aldrich and Kane will have that thrown out before I finish typing it." "There's the storage unit," Victoria said. "They're sitting on the storage unit," Jack said. "They told me so." "Then get somebody else to." "They're not sitting on the unit because of what's in it," Jack said. Everybody looked at him. 3:46. Jack Carter walked to the window and stood there with his back to the room, and when he spoke, his voice was different, slower, flatter. It was the voice of an engineer looking at a system. "They've had a man on that unit for 6 weeks, he said. 6 weeks. Why?" "Because they want what's inside," Ruiz said. "No." Jack turned around. "If they wanted what's inside, they'd have taken it 6 weeks ago. Cut the lock in the middle of the night and take the box. Nobody would ever know. It's a storage unit in Ridgeway, not a vault." Silence. "They didn't take it," Jack said. "For 6 weeks. Why not? Ruiz's mouth opened and then closed. Because they don't know what's in it, Ruiz said. That's right. They know you kept something. They know a site lead with a bad feeling probably kept something, Jack said, and they've spent 6 weeks too scared to find out because the second they cut that lock, they've committed a burglary, and they've told me they exist. So instead, they've been sitting on it, watching, hoping I never go back. Victoria Hayes said very quietly, "Then why call you and tell you they're there?" And Jack smiled that same bad smile. "Because they got scared," he said. "This morning. Something changed this morning." "What changed?" "I did," Jack said. "For 9 years I was a guy who fixed cars and never went near it. And last night I walked up a flight of stairs. And now they've got a man on a unit they're afraid to open, and a former engineer who suddenly has a reason." The room was dead silent. "They didn't call to threaten me," Jack said. "They called to stop me. That call was panic. That call cost them everything because up until 11:05 this morning, I didn't know they knew about that unit. And now I do. And now I know exactly one thing they've been trying to hide for 9 years." "Which is what?" Ruiz said. "That they can't get in," Jack said. 352. "There's still a man on it," Victoria said. "Yeah. So you can't go?" "No," Jack said. "I absolutely can't go." He picked up his keys. "Jack." Victoria. "Jack, that's a trap. He told you it's a trap. He called you and told you it's a trap that's not clever, that's a trap." "Yeah," Jack said. "It is." "Then why?" "Because a trap only works if you don't know it's a trap," Jack said. "If you know it's not a trap, it's a location." He turned to Ruiz. "You said you've got no case." "I've got no case. You've got a man sitting in a car outside a storage unit in Ridgeway who's been there 6 weeks on a corporate payroll from a shell company that doesn't exist," Jack said. "That's not a case." Ruiz stared at him. "That's a witness," Jack said. 401. Ruiz was on the phone for 11 minutes. When he came back in, his face had changed. "Okay," he said. "So, it turns out the bureaus had a file open on Kestrel Risk Solutions for 5 months. Victoria stood up so fast, her IV pole nearly went over. "What?" "Financial crimes. They've been watching the wires. They didn't have a why." Ruiz was almost laughing. "They had 9 payments from a Fortune 500 to a shell and no idea what the shell was buying. Ma'am, they've been sitting on this since February waiting for somebody to give them a crime. And now they've got a stabbing and attempted child abduction on hospital cameras and a 9-year-old falsified federal safety report." Ruiz looked at Jack. "They want to talk to you. Right now. Both of you." 420. Her name was Special Agent Dana Cho, and she was 38, and she talked like a woman who had said everything twice already today. "Mr. Carter, the unit. 208 Ridgeway Self-Storage. And what's in it? A paper log, handwritten, 9 years old. Every shift entry from my time as site lead at Meridian, including entry 41, which is dated on a Tuesday. And the official report says Wednesday." "Yes." Cho was quiet. "Mr. Carter, do you understand what that document is?" "It's a date." "No," Cho said. "It's the entire thing. Falsifying a federal safety record isn't a corporate matter, it's a felony, and 11 people died, which turns it into something a whole lot worse. If that log says what you say it says, then what happened at Meridian isn't negligence." She leaned in. "It's a homicide with a 9-year head start." Nobody spoke. "So here's my problem," Cho said. "I can't get a warrant for your own storage unit because it's yours. You can walk in there right now and take your own property, and I can't stop you and I can't help you. And there's a man watching it who works for people who put a knife in her." "So I go alone," Jack said. "Mr. Carter." "I go alone," Jack said, "and you sit 2 blocks away, and the second he moves on me, he's committed a crime in front of a federal agent." Cho's jaw tightened. "I'm not putting a civilian in." "I'm not asking," Jack said. "You've got a daughter." And Jack Carter stopped. That landed. It landed harder than anything anybody had said to him all day, and everyone in the room watched it land. "Yeah," he said. "I do." He looked out the window for a second. "You know what I've been telling myself for 9 years," he said. "That I stayed small for her. That I fixed cars and kept my head down and never fought any of it because a kid needs a father who comes home." He turned around. "That's a lie. I've been telling that lie so long I got good at it. I didn't stay small for Lily. I stayed small because I was ashamed, and Lily was the excuse I used, so I never had to look at it." The room was completely still. "There are 11 families out there," Jack said, "who have spent 9 years believing my name is the reason their people are dead. 11, and every one of them has a kid too." He picked up his keys again. "So no agent. I'm not going out there for Victoria Hayes. I'm not even going out there for mine. I'm going out there because there's a woman somewhere in this city who spent 9 years telling her son that Jack Carter killed his father, and she's wrong, and she has no idea, and I'm the only man alive who can fix it." 4:31. Cho looked at him for a long time. Then she said, 60 seconds. "What?" "You go in, you come out. If you're inside that unit longer than 60 seconds, I'm coming through the fence and it's my career." She stood. "And you wear a wire." "Fine." "And Mr. Carter." She stopped at the door. "If he pulls a weapon, you get on the ground. You don't fight. You don't be a hero. You get on the ground and you let me do my job." "Yeah," Jack said. "Say it. I'll get on the ground." Cho left, and Victoria Hayes said quietly from the bed, "You're lying." "Yeah," Jack said. 5:15. Ridgeway Self-Storage was 11 rows of orange doors and a fence with a bad gate, and Jack Carter's truck rolled through it at 5:15 with a microphone taped to his sternum and his hands loose on the wheel. Cho's voice in his ear. "You see him, Jesse, gray sedan, row 4. Been there a while, there's a coffee cup graveyard on the dash. Copy. He make you." "He made me the second I pulled in." Jack parked. He got out. He walked to Unit 208 with a key in his hand, and did not look at row 4 once. He voice from the phone. Calm, pleasant. The one that had described a green backpack with dinosaurs on it. "Cho," Jack said quietly. "He's here." "Copy hold?" "I know they're 2 blocks out," the man said. "The white van on Aldrich. It's got a plate from a rental fleet and a whip antenna." "Jack, I've done this for 22 years. You brought federal agents to a storage unit. Do you know what that tells me?" Jack said nothing. "It tells me you don't have anything," the man said. "Because if you had it, you'd have mailed it. You'd have FedExed it to the bureau this morning and been done. You came here, which means you needed to check." He was right. That was the terrible thing. He was exactly right. "So open it," the man said. Jack's hands were on the lid. "Open the box, Jack. Let's both find out together." And Jack Carter, kneeling on the concrete of Unit 208 with a federal microphone on his chest, and a man behind him he couldn't see, opened the box. 5:19. He looked inside, and Jack Carter said out loud, in a voice that came out cracked and disbelieving, "Oh my God." "What?" Cho said in his ear. "Carter, what? What's in the box?" What was in the box was a log, Jack's log. 9 years old, gray at the edges. A black hardcover ledger with a rubber band around it that had gone brittle and snapped the second he touched it. That wasn't what made him say it. Under the ledger, flat against the bottom of the box, was a white envelope. And Jack Carter had never seen it before in his life. "Carter," Cho's voice was tight in his ear. "Talk to me. What's in the box?" "There's an envelope," Jack said. "Yours?" "No." Behind him, the calm voice said, "Well, now that's interesting." Jack's hands had gone cold, because there were exactly 2 possibilities, and both of them were bad. Either somebody had been inside his unit, which meant 9 years of paying $41 a month for a box that wasn't his anymore. Or somebody had put it in the box before he ever locked it. He picked it up. His name was on the front, handwritten, blue ink, and Jack knew that handwriting, and the floor of the world tilted about 15 degrees. "Cho," he said. "It's from Danny Reyes." "Who's Danny Reyes?" "He was my shift supervisor," Jack said. "He's been dead for 8 years. 5:21. Nobody said anything on either end. Then the calm voice behind him said very quietly, "Open it, Jack." And that was the moment Jack Carter understood something. The man wanted him to open it, not stop him, not take it. He wanted him to open it, and there was something in the way he said it that was not the voice of a man doing a job. It was the voice of a man who had been waiting a long time for something. Jack turned around. He was maybe 50. Gray at the temples, a jacket that had been good 10 years ago, hands empty and open at his sides. He looked like somebody's uncle. He looked like a guy who'd fix your gutter. "You were told not to turn around," the man said. "Yeah, well." Jack held up the envelope. "You knew this was in here." "No." "You knew something was in here." The man didn't answer. 6 weeks, Jack said. 6 weeks, you sat on a unit you could have cut open in 9 seconds. You want to tell me why?" Carter Cho said in his ear. "Carter, we are moving, do not engage, do not engage." "Because I was told to watch it," the man said, "not open it." "By who?" "By a man who pays me on the 15th and the 30th. Marcus Webb." The man's face did nothing at all. "That's not a name I know," he said. "Sure it isn't." Jack took a step. "You called me this morning. You told me about my daughter's backpack." "Yes." "You want to explain that?" And the man said something Jack was not ready for. "I wanted you scared enough to stay home," he said. "That's all it was. Jack, I have been sitting in a car outside a storage unit for 6 weeks, praying to God you never came back. And then you got on the phone, and I heard your voice, and I knew you were coming, and I made the call. I made because I thought if I said the kid's name, you'd stop." He shook his head slowly. "You didn't stop." "No. No, you never do. That's what your file says." The man let out a breath. "You know what my instructions were if you showed up. Do you know what they actually were? Tell me. Take the box. Take you. Put both in the trunk." 5:24. Jack didn't move. "And I've been sitting out there for 6 weeks, the man said, thinking about what kind of man takes a mechanic out of a storage unit in a trunk. And thinking about the 11 names. And thinking about my kid who's 19 and who thinks his old man does security consulting." Jack said, "So do it." "What?" "Do it," Jack said. "I'm standing right here. Box is at my feet. Go on." And the man in the good 10 years ago jacket stood in the row at Ridgeway Self-Storage and did nothing. "Carter, we're at the fence," Cho said. 20 seconds. "There's federal agents 20 seconds out," Jack said. "You know that. You made the van from 2 blocks. I know. So run." "Where?" the man said. And that word came out of him like something breaking. "Jack, I'm 51 years old," he said. "I've got 9 payments from a shell corp in Delaware with my name on the license inside them. There's no running. There's a plea, or there's a trunk. And the trunk isn't for you. Son, it hasn't been for you since about 2 o'clock this afternoon, when 2 guys got picked up in a hospital stairwell." He laughed with nothing in it. "You think Webb's people are worried about you? They're worried about me. I'm the one who knows the wires." Jack stared at him. "You're not the man on the unit," he said slowly. "You're the man they're going to bury with the unit." "Yeah." 5:26. The van came through the gate. Doors boots shouting, and Cho was screaming, "Hands!" And the man put his hands on top of his head without being asked twice, and got on his knees on the concrete like he'd rehearsed it. Which he probably had. Which he probably had been rehearsing for 6 weeks in a car full of coffee cups. Cho came up the row with her weapon out and her eyes on Jack. "Are you hit?" "No." "Did he touch you?" "He didn't do anything," Jack said. "Agent, he didn't do anything." Cho looked at him, then at the man on his knees. "Name," she said. "Gil Rourke," the man said. "Mr. Rourke, you understand you're under arrest." Ma'am, I've understood that since February, Rourke said. I just didn't know who'd be doing it. And then Gil Rourke, on his knees with his hands on his head, said the sentence that ended a 9-year lie. I want a lawyer, he said. Not Aldrich and Kane. Any lawyer on this earth except Aldrich and Kane. And then I want to talk. About everything. And ma'am, before you get excited, I need you to know something first. What? Webb's not the top, Rourke said. Webb's a guy who makes calls. He's never once told me what to do without checking first. Cho went very still. Checking with who? She said. Rourke shook his head. Not on the ground, he said. Not in a parking lot. You put me in a room with a U.S. attorney and a piece of paper, and I will give you a name, and then you're going to want to sit down. 5:31. Jack Carter sat on the tailgate of his own truck with an envelope in his hands. Cho stood over him. Mr. Carter, that's evidence. It's addressed to me. Mr. Carter, Agent Cho. Jack looked up. Danny Reyes died 8 years ago. He put a hose in a tailpipe in his garage in Lorain, Ohio, 14 months after the plant. He left a wife and a boy. I couldn't go to the funeral because his family thought I killed his crew, and I sat in my truck 4 blocks away like a coward for 2 hours. Cho didn't say anything. He wrote my name on this, Jack said. He put it in my box, and I have to know when. You have gloves in the truck. Yeah. Put them on, Cho said. And I'm filming. Jack put the gloves on. His hands shook so badly it took him 3 tries to get the second one on, and nobody said a word about it. He opened the envelope. There were 4 pages. 5:34. The first was a photocopy of a transmittal receipt. Jack read it, and his throat closed. What is it? Cho said. It's a receipt, Jack said. Internal document transmittal. Corporate ran a paper system alongside the server back then. Everything that went upstairs got a receipt machine stamped, initialed by whoever received it at the desk. And, this is mine, Jack said. This is my flag. The pressure differential on line 3. Machine stamp. He turned it around. 1406. Tuesday. Cho leaned in. 9 days, she said. 9 days. Who initialed the receiving line? Jack looked at it for a long time. There's no initials, he said. There's a signature. Whose? And Jack Carter said, Marcus Webb. 5:36. Cho took the page out of his hand so fast the glove snagged. That's not possible, she said. He was VP of Operations. VPs don't sign a receiving line. No, Jack said. They don't. Somebody at a desk does. Then why did he? Because he was standing there, Jack said quietly. Because it came upstairs, and it was bad, and somebody handed it to the first suit they saw, and Marcus Webb took it out of a clerk's hands and signed for it himself, so nobody else would ever touch it. Cho's mouth had gone flat. He signed for the thing that killed 11 people, she said. 9 days before it killed them. With his own hand, Jack said. On a Tuesday. 5:38. The second page was a letter. It was 3 paragraphs, and it was in that same handwriting, and Jack read it twice, and then he put it face down on the tailgate and put his fist against his mouth for about 10 seconds and did not make a sound. Mr. Carter. Give me a second. Take it. Jack took it. Then he picked the page back up. Danny escalated twice, he said. That's in the letter. He says he took it to Webb's floor personally on the Thursday because nothing had come back, and he says a man came down and told him it was handled and to leave it. And then he says something else. What? He says the man told him, and I'm reading it exactly. If it blows on the site. That's what a site lead is for. Cho closed her eyes. 6 days before, Jack said. They said that 6 days before. They knew. They didn't miss it. They chose. Mr. Carter. They picked me, Jack said, and his voice came apart in the middle of it. That's what I'm holding. They didn't blame me after. They picked me before. I was already the answer to a question nobody had asked yet. I was the guy they were going to hand to the families while the funeral flowers were still fresh. Cho, 38 years old, 11 years in, looked away. Why didn't he come forward? She said. Reyes, he had this. Why didn't he? Because he tried, Jack said. That's page 3, 541. Page 3 was a copy of an email printed dated 4 months after the plant. Danny Reyes to the company's internal ethics line, and below it the reply. Jack read the reply out loud, and his voice was flat and terrible. Thank you for your report. Your concern has been reviewed and closed. Please be advised that continued unsubstantiated allegations may constitute a violation of your separation agreement and could expose you to personal liability. Nobody spoke. They threatened him, Cho said. They ruined him, Jack said. He had a wife and a boy and no job and a separation agreement, and he sent that email, and 4 months later he did what he did in that garage in Lorraine. He put the page down. And before he did, Jack said he drove to a storage unit in Ridgeway that he wasn't supposed to know about and put this in a box and closed the lid and left it there for 8 years. How did he know about the unit? Because he helped me move the box in, Jack said. 19. He was there. He carried the other end. 544. Page 4 was one line. Jack didn't read it out loud. It said, Jack, I'm sorry I didn't say it louder. If you're reading this, say it louder than I did. Jack Carter sat on the tailgate of a truck in a storage lot and put his head in his hands, and Special Agent Dana Cho did not tell him to stop. 549. Cho's phone rang. She listened for 11 seconds. Then she said, say that again. She listened for 11 more. Carter, she said, get in the truck. What? Webb's at the hospital. Jack was on his feet. It's not 6. It's 5:49, and he's in the lobby with 2 men and a car at the door, Cho said. And Detective Ruiz says he came early. 5:58. Marcus Webb stood in the corridor outside room 411 with his hands folded in front of him and a look of enormous patient concern on his face. Victoria, we should move. Not yet. The car's downstairs. Marcus, sit down. Victoria, sit down. He sat. Victoria Hayes was in the chair by the window and not the bed. She had made them help her into it 40 minutes ago. She had made Denise bring her a blouse. She'd had a nurse comb her hair, and she'd put on the Rolex that 3 men hadn't bothered to take, and she looked for the first time in 20 hours, like the woman whose name was on the building. How's Emma? Webb said. With Denise. Good, good. He smoothed his tie. Vic, I want you to hear this from me before the board does. There's going to be pressure to invoke the succession clause. Temporary. Purely optical. The market opened down 4% this morning on the news, and if you're not visibly at the wheel by Monday, you want the chair. I want the company to survive the week. Victoria tilted her head. Marcus, can I ask you something? Anything. 15 years. You've never once told me a lie I could catch. Not one. That's remarkable when you think about it. 15 years. He smiled. I don't lie to you. No, Victoria said. You just answer the question I asked. The smile stayed exactly where it was. I don't follow. When I called you this afternoon, Victoria said, and I told you men took Emma out of a stairwell, you asked me one question. Do you remember what it was? Victoria. You said, what man? Silence. I told you a stranger saved her, Victoria said. And you didn't ask if she was hurt. You didn't ask if she was crying. You didn't ask which hospital floor or how many of them there were, or whether they had weapons, or whether the police had them. Her voice never rose, not once. You asked what man. Marcus Webb sat very still. You weren't scared for her, Victoria said. You were doing inventory. 602. Vic, Webb said gently. You've been through something horrific. You're on narcotics. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Is it? You're not thinking clearly. Marcus, who is Gil Rourke. And Marcus Webb's face did the thing. It was very small. It was maybe a quarter of a second. But Victoria Hayes had watched that man across 4,000 meetings, and she saw it the way a mother sees a fever. "I don't know that name," he said. "He's on your payroll. I have 1,100 people on my payroll. He's the fourth employee of a Delaware shell called Kestrel Risk Solutions that has been paid 9 times out of your cost center in 14 months, Victoria said, for consulting. Webb didn't answer. "Marcus." "Victoria, I want you to stop talking. That's the first honest thing you've said in this room. I'm serious." And his voice changed. All the warmth went out of it in one syllable, and what was left underneath was flat and fast, and Victoria had never once in 15 years heard it. "I want you to stop talking right now and get in the car, because you have no idea what you've walked into, and you're about 8 minutes from making it unfixable." "Unfixable for me," Victoria said, "or for you, for Emma." The room went silent, and Victoria Hayes stood up out of that chair with a drain in her side and 200 stitches in her, and looked at the man who had put the pen in her hand 9 years ago. "Say that again," she said. 6:04. Webb stood too. "I'm not the one you should be afraid of," he said quietly. "Vic, look at me. 15 years. Have I ever one time done a single thing that wasn't to protect you? Marcus?" "I signed for a maintenance flag on a Tuesday," Webb said. Victoria stopped breathing. "Yeah," he said, and his eyes were wet, which was somehow the worst part of all of it. "I signed for it. I took it out of a clerk's hands and I carried it upstairs myself, because I was 29 years into a career and I knew what it meant, and I went up to the 31st floor and I put it on a desk and I said, 'This has to go to the plant tonight.'" "Whose desk?" Victoria whispered. Webb didn't answer. "Whose desk? Marcus." "And he looked at it for about 6 seconds," Webb said, "and he handed it back to me, and he said, 'Move the date.'" 6:05. Victoria Hayes reached out and put her hand on the windowsill because her legs had stopped working. "No," she said. He said, "Move the date, Marcus. One day. Nobody will ever look." "No." And he was right, Webb said. "Nobody ever looked. 9 years. Not one person on this earth ever looked until a mechanic got out of his truck last night. Marcus, whose desk?" And Marcus Webb, Chief Operating Officer, 15 years, 4,000 meetings, sat back down in the chair and put his face in his hands and said, "Arthur's." The word went through Victoria Hayes like the knife had. "Arthur Kane," Webb said. "Chairman of the board. The man who found you in a regional office in Cleveland when you were 31 and told everybody in that building you were going to run it one day. The man who walked you down the aisle when your father was too sick to fly. The man who held Emma at her christening Victoria. That desk." 6:07. Victoria Hayes did not scream. She did not cry. She said, "You let me sign it." "Yes. You put the pen in my hand and you said we had a funeral to get to." "Yes." "Why?" "Because if you signed it," Webb said, "you couldn't unsign it. That was the whole point. Vic, that was the entire architecture of the thing. He didn't need a scapegoat at the plant. He had one that was easy, that was Carter. He needed a scapegoat at the top. He needed a name on page 14 that wasn't his, and a woman he'd made who'd never in 1,000 years believe he'd use her. And you helped him. I helped him," Webb said, "and then he made me COO in April, and I have spent 9 years learning exactly how much that cost." 11 people, Marcus." 12, Webb said. Victoria looked at him. "Danny Reyes," Webb said. "Lorain, Ohio, 12. 6:10. And that was when Jack Carter came through the door. He had a black ledger under his arm and a federal agent behind him, and Marcus Webb looked up, and every drop of blood left the man's face at once. "Carter," he said. "Webb, how much did you hear?" "All of it," Cho said. "Room's been wired since 4:30, Mr. Webb. You want to say it again for the record?" Webb closed his eyes, and then he laughed. It was not a good sound. "You don't have him," he said. "Excuse me, you have me." Webb looked up. That's what you don't understand. You've got a receipt with my signature and a confession with my voice and a shell corp under my cost center. Everything, all of it. Every single piece of paper in this building has my name on it because that's what I am. That's what he built me to be." He spread his hands. "There is not one document on this earth with Arthur Kane's name on it. 9 years, 9 payments, 12 dead. Not one piece of paper." Cho's jaw worked. "You'll testify," she said. "To what?" Webb said. "A conversation 6 seconds at a desk in 2017, with no witness, no recording, no memo. He'll be in front of a Senate committee inside a month, looking devastated and betrayed, and he will say, 'Marcus Webb was a man I trusted, and he has destroyed me.' And every camera in America will believe him, because he is 81 years old, and he has given $400 million to children's hospitals." The room was silent. "You want him," Webb said. "You'd need him to say it, out loud, to someone." "Then he'll say it," Jack said. Everybody turned. "He's not going to say it to a federal agent," Webb said. "He's not going to say it to a lawyer. He's not going to say it to her. She's the one thing on this planet he's actually careful around." "Then who?" Cho said. And Marcus Webb looked at Jack Carter for a long moment. "You," he said. 614. "Explain," Cho said. "He's 81, Webb said. "He's had 2 strokes, and he has spent 9 years believing exactly one thing about the man in this room, which is that Jack Carter is safe. He's a guy who fixes cars. He rolled over. He never fought, never sued, never gave a single interview, never even showed up to the memorial." Webb's eyes came up. "Arthur's been watching you for 9 years, Carter, the way a man watches a dog that already got kicked. You're not a threat. You're proof. You're proof that the whole thing worked. So there's only one thing Arthur Kane has never had," Webb said. "In 60 years. And it's the thing he wants more than anything in this world, and he can't buy it, and he can't hire it, and he can't put it in a foundation." "What?" Victoria said. "Somebody to know," Webb said. "Vic, he's 81. He's dying. He's got 200 people who love him, and not one of them knows a single true thing about him. Do you understand what that is? 60 years of being the smartest man in every room, and never once getting to say so?" 616. Nobody moved. "He'd tell Carter," Webb said quietly. "Not out of guilt, out of vanity, because Carter's the audience. He's the guy it was all done to. There's no point to a masterpiece if the thing you made it out of never sees it." Cho said, "That's insane." "Ma'am, I've worked for that man for 22 years, Webb said. "It's the only true thing I've told you." And Jack Carter said, "Okay." "Jack," Victoria started. "Where is he?" Jack said. "Jack? No." "Where is he?" "He's at the house," Webb said. "In Bellhaven. He hasn't left it in 14 months. There's a nurse and a driver, and about $9 million of security and a hospital bed in the sunroom that he refuses to use. Get me in." "Mr. Carter," Cho said. "Absolutely not. You are a civilian, and a wire in a private residence in that county requires 618. Jack's phone rang. Unknown number. The whole room went quiet. He looked at it. He looked at Cho. She nodded once fast and pulled her own phone out and started recording. Jack answered. "Carter?" And a voice said, "Daddy." 619. Jack Carter's entire body went to stone. "Lily." "Daddy, there's a man." "Lily, where's Rosa? Where's Mrs. Alvarez?" "She fell down," Lily said, and her voice was so small it barely made it through the phone. "Daddy, she fell down and she's not getting up, and there's a man in her kitchen and he says we're going for a ride, and I said no, and he said—" The phone changed hands, and a new voice came on. Old, dry, amused, a voice like paper. "Mr. Carter," it said, "I'm told you've had a very full day." Jack could not speak. "You have something of mine," the voice said. "A book. And I have something of yours, and I want you to understand, before you say anything at all, that I am not a monster, and this child will not be harmed. She's having a juice box. She's a delight. She looks exactly like her mother, which I imagine is difficult for you." Victoria Hayes had both hands over her mouth. "Arthur," she said. "Oh, Victoria's there," the voice said warmly. "Of course she is. Hello, sweetheart. Arthur, what have you done?" "Shh, shh, shh, shh." A dry little laugh. "Mr. Carter, here's the arrangement, and it's a very generous one, so listen carefully. You come to my home, alone. You bring the book. And you and I are going to sit down and have the conversation that you and I have owed each other for 9 years. Put my daughter on the phone. In a moment. First tell me you understand the shape of it. You come alone, Mr. Carter. No van, no Agent Cho, and yes, I know her name, her supervisor, and I are on 2 boards together, just you and the book and me. And then your daughter goes home," Arthur Kane said. "That's the whole of it. I'm 81. I don't want the child. I don't want the book particularly. Do you know what I want?" Jack's hands were shaking so hard the phone rattled against his ear. "What?" he said. And Arthur Kane said in that dry, pleasant, delighted old voice, "I want to look at the one man who beat me, just once, before I die." 6:22. The line clicked. "Daddy," Lily said. "Daddy, are you coming?" And Jack Carter closed his eyes, and every promise he had ever made to that little girl went through him at once. "Bug," he said, "listen to me. Are you listening?" "Yes." "I'm coming, right now. I'm already in the truck." "Okay." "And Lily, the man there. Do whatever he says. Don't be brave. You hear me? Don't you be brave for 1 single second." "Okay, Daddy. I love you." "I love you too," Lily said. "Daddy, my juice box is apple." And then she was gone. 6:24. Jack Carter picked up the ledger. "Carter," Cho said. "Carter, don't you take 1 step toward that door. We do this right. We call Bellhaven PD. We get a tactical team, we get eyes on the house. He'll know." "Carter, he knows your name, Agent," Jack said. "He knows your supervisor's name. He's been 3 moves ahead of everybody in this building for 9 years, and you want to take an hour and a half to spin up a team. He was already at the door. I've got a 6-year-old in a house in Bellhaven drinking an apple juice box next to a man who murdered 12 people with a pen. You walk in there, and you don't walk out." "Yeah," Jack said. "Probably." And Victoria Hayes said, "Jack." He stopped. She was standing. She had one hand on the IV pole, and she was gray and shaking, and her eyes were the clearest thing in that room. "9 years ago," she said, "a man handed me a piece of paper and told me to hurry, and I signed it, and I have spent every day since being a person who does what she's told." She let go of the pole. "I'm coming with you." "No." "Jack." "Victoria, you can't stand up." "He won't shoot me," Victoria said. "That's the entire point. He spent 9 years making sure there's not 1 drop of anything on him, and I am the only human being alive he cannot make disappear because I'm the face. If I'm in that room, he has to be careful." Jack stared at her. "Also," she said, "he loves me. And that's a weapon, and I have never once in my life used it, and I'm going to use it tonight." 6:27. Cho put her hand flat against the door. "Both of you listen to me," she said. "I cannot authorize this. If you go, I have to write in a report that 2 civilians left this hospital against my instruction, and if it goes wrong, that report is the last thing anybody ever reads about either of you." "Then write it," Jack said. Cho didn't move. And then very slowly she reached into her jacket and pulled out a small black rectangle and pressed it into Jack's hand. "That's a recorder," she said. "It's not a wire. It doesn't transmit. It just listens. There's no signal for his people to sweep, and it runs for 4 hours. Agent?" "I'm not there, Mr. Carter," Cho said. "Do you understand me? I am not there. Nobody's coming. There's no van 2 blocks away this time. It's a house full of his men, and an old man and your kid, and that recorder is the only thing on your side." Jack closed his hand around it. "That's enough," he said. 6:31. The truck pulled out of St. Anne's with a woman in a hospital gown and a blazer in the passenger seat, and a 9-year-old ledger on the bench between them. Neither of them said anything for 11 minutes. Then Victoria said, "Jack." "Yeah." If it goes wrong in there. If he does the thing he does, and he walks, and none of it sticks. Yeah. You should know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life on it, she said. Every dollar, every hour, if I have to sell the building. Jack watched the road. That's nice, he said. But I don't need you to spend your life on it. Then what do you need? And Jack Carter said, I need my kid to finish her juice box. 6:58. The gate at Bellhaven was open. It was open, which was the worst thing Jack had seen all day, because it meant they were expected, and it meant nobody was worried. There was a man at the top of the drive with his hands folded. Jack put the truck in park and picked up the ledger and looked at Victoria. Last chance, he said. Drive me home and I'll walk back, Victoria said. They got out. The man at the door looked at the ledger and at Victoria, and did not search either of them, which told Jack everything about how little Arthur Kane thought of the odds. He's in the sunroom, the man said, and Jack Carter walked into that house with a black ledger under his arm and a recorder in his shirt pocket, and the sound of a 6-year-old saying, My juice box is apple, going around and around in his head. The old man was in a chair with a blanket on his knees. He looked up, and his whole face lit with a real delighted grandfatherly warmth, and he said, Mr. Carter, at last, sit down, sit down. You have no idea how long I've wanted to meet you. Jack Carter did not sit down. Where is she? Upstairs. Second door on the left. There's a woman with her named Marguerite, who has raised 4 children of her own and is currently, I believe, teaching your daughter gin rummy. Arthur Kane gestured at the chair across from him. Sit down, Mr. Carter. I want to see her. You will. Now, Mr. Carter. The old man's voice never rose. You are standing in my home. The gate behind you is closed. There are 6 men in this house. I am 81 years old, and I have had 2 strokes, and I could not stand up to save my own life, and I am still, at this moment, the most powerful person in this room, by a margin so wide it's almost embarrassing. He smiled. Sit down. Jack sat down. 7:02. Victoria, Arthur said warmly. Sweetheart, you look like death. I've had a night. You should be in a bed. Arthur, I want you to hear me say this once. Victoria lowered herself into a chair with one hand pressed to her side. You held my daughter at her christening. I did. And you had a man put a knife in me in a parking garage. And Arthur Kane said no. He said it simply, almost gently. And Jack, who had spent 2 decades listening to men lie, felt the hair on his arm stand up because the old man wasn't lying. I didn't, Arthur said. That's the truth, and you can do what you like with it. Marcus panicked. Marcus has been panicking since April. Marcus made a call to men he shouldn't have called and gave an instruction he shouldn't have given, and I found out about it at 9 o'clock last night from a hospital administrator who sits on my foundation board. He shook his head slowly. Vic, I've been furious for 22 hours. That's an amateur's move. You don't put a knife in the CEO. You never put a knife in the CEO. The CEO is the product. You're saying you'd have stopped it. I'm saying I'd have done it properly, Arthur said. I'd have had you out in 18 months with a health disclosure and a very generous package and everyone weeping at the send-off. 7:05. Jack said, say his name. Arthur turned. I'm sorry. Danny Reyes, Jack said. Say his name. I don't know that name. He was your shift supervisor at Meridian. Mr. Carter, I had 11,000 employees. He escalated it twice, Jack said. He drove to your floor, and a man came down and told him, if it blows on the site. That's what a site lead is for. Arthur Kane's eyes came up, and there was something new in them. Where did you get that sentence? He said. Danny wrote it down. He's dead. He wrote it down before, Jack said. He put it in an envelope with my name on it, and he put it in my storage unit, and then he went home to Lorain, Ohio, and killed himself in his garage. 7:07. For the first time all evening, Arthur Kane was quiet. Then he said, That's remarkable. That's what you've got. Mr. Carter, you don't understand what I mean. The old man leaned forward on his blanket. I said, if it blows on the site. I said it in an elevator lobby in 2017 to a man whose face I do not remember, and it has been in a cardboard box in Ridgeway for 8 years. He laughed a real laugh, delighted wheezing. Do you know how many things I've said in 60 years? Do you know how many of them exist anywhere? None. Not one. That's the whole discipline. And a dead shift supervisor from Ohio wrote one down. Does that scare you? It thrills me, Arthur said. Mr. Carter, I've been bored for 14 months. 7:09. Victoria said, Arthur, there's a 6-year-old upstairs. There is. Let her go. In a moment. Now. Victoria. And the warmth went out of him 1 degree, and it was worse than shouting. You are in my house because I permitted it, and you are alive because I like you, and I have liked you since you were 31, and you told a room full of men in Cleveland that their numbers were fiction. I have never in my life had to be unkind to you. Please don't make this the night. Victoria Hayes shut her mouth, and Jack Carter watched a woman who ran 9,000 people get put back in her chair by an old man with a blanket on his knees, and understood exactly what he was sitting across from. Now. Arthur turned back. The book. Jack put the ledger on the table. Arthur looked at it for a long moment. He didn't touch it. Entry 41, he said. Yes. Tuesday. Yes. In your hand, in ink, dated contemporaneously. Arthur nodded slowly. Marcus told me you kept a paper log, 9 years ago. I said, then get it. He said, it's in a storage unit, and if we take it, he'll know we were looking. He smiled thinly. That was the single most intelligent thing Marcus Webb has said in 22 years, and I've regretted agreeing with him every day since. You could have taken it any time. Yes. Why didn't you? Because you were quiet, Arthur said. Mr. Carter, you were the most beautiful thing in the entire arrangement. Every other loose end had to be managed. Reyes had to be threatened. The families had to be settled. The regulators had to be walked through it 3 times. And you just went away. You took your license and your name and 11 dead men, and you went and fixed transmissions for 9 years and never said a word. The old man spread his hands. Why would I go into that unit? Going into that unit was the only thing on earth that could have woken you up. 7:12. And then, last night, Arthur said you got out of your truck. I heard a kid scream. Yes, Arthur said. You did. And that Mr. Carter is the only variable in 9 years I did not model. He sat back. That's what I wanted to look at, he said. That's why you're here. Not the book, not the girl. I wanted to sit 3 feet from the one man who beat me and find out what he's made of, and the answer is nothing. You're not made of anything. You're not clever. You didn't outthink me. You didn't find a flaw. His voice had genuine wonder in it. You heard a noise on a staircase and your legs went the wrong way. Yeah, Jack said. Doesn't that offend you? No, it offends me, Arthur Kane said. And for 1 second, the mask came all the way off, and what was underneath was a very old, very tired rage. 60 years. 60 years of building things that don't have a single seam in them. And the whole architecture comes down because a mechanic has reflexes. 7:15. So here's what happens now, Arthur said, and the warmth came back on like a switch. You leave that book on my table. You go upstairs and collect your daughter. And a car takes you both home, and on Monday morning a foundation you've never heard of establishes a scholarship in your name, and a very good lawyer petitions the state to reinstate your engineering license, and 11 families receive a letter explaining that new information has come to light. Jack said nothing. Your name back, Arthur said. Your career back, your license. Publicly. In every paper in this country. Mr. Carter, I can make you clean by Thursday. That's not a bribe, that's not even difficult. That's a phone call and a press release and 40 minutes of a Tuesday. And in exchange, nothing happens to Arthur Kane, the old man said. Marcus Webb goes to prison. He's already gone. He confessed in a hospital room to a federal agent that's done, that's finished. He was always going to be the one who goes. That's what he was for. He'll get 11 years and serve 6, and the story will be complete and satisfying, and every person in America will believe it, because it will be 99% true. 7:18. Victoria said, "Jack, don't. Victoria, be quiet, the adults are talking." "Arthur, he gets everything he's wanted for 9 years," Arthur said, "and all he has to do is not have me. And Mr. Carter, look at me. Look at me carefully. I have congestive heart failure and 18 months at the outside. What are you buying? What are you actually buying with your daughter's father, a dying man in a courtroom in 3 years being wheeled out for the cameras? That's what you want." And Jack Carter said, "Yes." "Why?" "Because Danny Reyes's boy is 19, Jack said, "and he spent 8 years thinking his dad was weak." The room was silent. "That's it," Arthur said. "That's it. That's sentiment." "Yeah," Jack said. 7:20. Arthur Kane looked at him for a long, long moment. Then he said, "You know, I believe you. I actually believe you. That's extraordinary." He reached out and put one finger on the ledger. "But you're going to leave the book anyway." "No. Mr. Carter, there is a 6-year-old upstairs." And there it was. Jack Carter had known it was coming since the phone call. He had driven 40 minutes knowing it was coming. And it still went through him like a spike. "You said she wouldn't be harmed," he said. "She won't be." "You said that on the phone." "And I meant it," Arthur said. "Mr. Carter, I'm not going to hurt your daughter. I want you to understand that I mean this sincerely. I have never in 60 years harmed a child, and I'm not starting at 81. And if that man Marcus called had touched her, I'd have had him in the ground by morning." "Then what?" Arthur Kane smiled, and it was the kindest smile Jack had ever seen on a human face, and it was the most frightening thing that had ever happened to him. "I'm not going to hurt her," he said. "I'm going to hurt Mrs. Alvarez." 7:22. Jack was out of the chair. 2 men came through the door before he'd taken a full step, and one of them put a hand flat on his chest, and Jack stopped, because behind them in the hallway he'd heard something. He'd heard a little girl laugh. Upstairs. Faint. Real. And the sound of that laugh took every ounce of violence out of Jack Carter's body and left him standing there empty. "Sit down, Mr. Carter." Jack sat down. "Rosa Alvarez is 68, Arthur said pleasantly. "She's at Mercy General with a fractured hip and a concussion, and she's stable, and she's going to be fine, and she is currently the only witness in this country who can place a man from Kestrel Risk Solutions inside a private residence with a minor. She's also, and this is the part I want you to think about very carefully, an undocumented resident of this country for 31 years. Victoria said, "Oh my God." "There's an immigration attorney in this city," Arthur said, "who owes my foundation a great deal and who could file paperwork by 9 a.m. Monday. That would put that woman on a plane in 6 weeks. Or there's a different attorney who could have her citizenship expedited by a congressman I've known since he was a staffer." He shrugged under the blanket. "Same phone, different number." Jack couldn't speak. "She's raised your child, hasn't she?" Arthur said. "Since your wife left, 4 nights a week. Free some weeks, I'd imagine, when you were short." "Don't." "Mr. Carter, I'm not threatening a little girl. I would never. I'm threatening a 68-year-old woman with a broken hip who loves your daughter." He tilted his head. "Which one is worse? Honestly, I've always wondered." 7:25. Jack Carter sat in that chair and felt 9 years of everything come down on him at once. And he understood finally and completely what he'd been fighting. Not a man, not a conspiracy. A machine. A machine that had been running for 60 years and had never once had to break a law it couldn't afford, because it had learned the exact shape of every human being's love and how to put a hand on it. "You want the book," Jack said. "I want the book. And then Rosa's fine. Rosa's a citizen by Christmas. And the families get Marcus," Arthur said. And a very large check. And Mr. Carter, they get you. They get to know they were wrong about you. And I imagine some of them will write you letters, and I imagine you'll keep them." He nodded at the ledger. "You can have everything you came for. Everything. All of it. Except the last man." Jack looked at the ledger on the table. Then he looked at Victoria, and Victoria Hayes was staring at him with tears running down her face, and she gave the smallest shake of her head 1 inch, and Jack thought about a woman on a garage floor spending her last 15 seconds of consciousness on a warning. "Okay," Jack said. Arthur Kane's eyes closed in something like relief. "Thank you. On one condition." "Name it." "Say it," Jack said. 7:28. Arthur opened his eyes. "Say what?" "Say what you did," Jack said. "To me, out loud, in this room. That's the price." The old man went very still. "Mr. Carter, you've got what you want," Jack said. "You've got the book you've got. Rosa, you've got my kid upstairs. There's nobody here. Your men aren't in the room. She's a CEO who signed page 14 she can't testify against you without hanging herself, and you know it. That's why you built her that way. And I'm a mechanic with a felony-adjacent file, who they walked out of a building 9 years ago. There's not a jury in this country that'd take my word over yours." Jack leaned forward. "So say it. You've been waiting 60 years. There's nobody left to say it to but me." Arthur Kane stared at him, and Jack watched it happen. He watched the wanting come up in that old man's face like water coming up in a basement, and it was the most naked thing he'd ever seen. "Marcus told you," Arthur said. "Marcus told me you're vain. Marcus is a coward and a fool, and he's going to prison, and he's also," Arthur said quietly, "the only man who ever understood me." 7:30. "Say it," Jack said, and Arthur Kane said, "I destroyed you on purpose." Nobody breathed. "On the Tuesday," he said, "Marcus Webb brought me a maintenance flag from a site lead named Jack Carter, and I read it and I understood immediately that line 3 was going to fail. Not might. Was. I've been an engineer's son my whole life. Mr. Carter, I could read that page. And I sat there and I did the arithmetic, and shutting line 3 for a full inspection was 11 days at 40 million a day in a quarter where we'd already guided down twice, and the board would have had me out by spring." He said it evenly, like a man reading a menu. "So I handed it back and I said move the date. 1 day, 9 days to 8. Because at 8 days, the flag arrives outside the corporate response window and it becomes a site-level failure, and site-level failures have a name on them, and the name was already on the page." He looked up. "It was your name, Mr. Carter. You'd signed your own flag. You handed me the whole thing gift-wrapped, and you did it by being good at your job." Jack could not move. 11 men died on the 19th, Arthur said. "I knew on the 10th. I had 9 days. I could have stopped it with a phone call, and the call would have cost $440 million, and my chairmanship, and I made a decision, and Mr. Carter, I want you to hear this precisely because you asked for precision, I would make it again." Victoria Hayes made a sound like she'd been hit. "Because I've built $40 billion of value in 60 years, Arthur said, and I've put 400 million into children's hospitals, and I've saved more lives with a checkbook than those 11 men would have saved in 10 lifetimes. And if the price of that is a plant in Ohio and a mechanic in a bad jacket, then that is a price, and I have paid it, and I sleep." He sat back. "There," he said, 9 years, now you know." And then Arthur Kane smiled, and Jack Carter saw it the pleasure. The pure physical relief of a man who had finally been seen. "Was it what you hoped?" the old man said. "No," Jack said. He stood up. "What was it?" "Small," Jack said. 7:34. He reached into his shirt pocket, and Arthur Kane's face changed. Jack put the recorder on the table next to the ledger. Nobody said a word. "That's not a wire," Jack said. "It doesn't transmit. Your men swept me for a signal at the door. I watched them do it with a handheld, and it's a good one, and it found nothing because there was nothing to find." He tapped it once. "It's a recorder. It just listens. 4-hour battery. It's been running since 6:31. Arthur Kane looked at that small black rectangle for a very long time. Then he laughed. "Mr. Carter," he said, "that's not admissible. This is a private residence in a two-party consent state. That recording is worthless. Any first year could—" "Yeah," Jack said. "Agent Cho told me. In the truck on the way out, she said it 11 times. "Then why?" "Because I don't need it for a court," Jack said. 7:36. The old man stopped laughing. "There's 400 people at your foundation," Jack said. "There's a hospital wing with your name on it. There's a business school. There's 200 people who love you," Marcus said. He said the one thing you've never had is somebody who knows. Jack picked up the recorder. "Well," he said, "now everybody's going to know." Arthur Kane's face went the color of the blanket. "You can't release that." "Who's going to stop me?" "I'll have an injunction by." "Against who?" Jack said. "Me, I've got nothing. You made sure of that 9 years ago. I've got a truck with 190,000 miles on it and a storage unit I pay $41 a month for. Sue me, Arthur. Take it. Take all of it. Get in line behind the last people who took it." 7:38. Arthur Kane's hands had closed on the arms of the chair. "You'd be destroying a foundation that funds—" "Yeah, and that'll be sad," Jack said. "And they'll rename the wing, and the money'll go somewhere else. And in about 4 years, nobody in this country will remember your face. That's the whole thing, Arthur. That's all I've got. I can't put you in a cell. I know that. I've known that since Marcus said it in the hospital." He put the recorder in his pocket. "But I can make it so that when you die in 18 months, not one person on this earth is sad about it. And I can make sure the last thing you hear before you go is your own voice saying, 'I'd make it again.'" The old man's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "You wanted somebody to know," Jack said. "That was your one weakness. 60 years no seams, and you had exactly one hole in you, and it was that you were lonely." He shook his head. "You didn't get beat by a mechanic with reflexes, Arthur. You got beat because you couldn't stand another year of nobody clapping." 7:41. And then Arthur Kane did the last thing he had. "Take the book," he said. "Take the recording. Take everything. Just leave the girl." Jack stopped. "What?" "Your daughter," Arthur said. "Upstairs. Second door on the left." His voice had gone thin and reedy and old. "You walk out of here with that recorder, and you don't walk out with her. Mr. Carter, I have 6 men in this house." And Jack Carter said very quietly, "Arthur, listen." "What?" "Just listen." And in the silence from somewhere out past the gate, very faint, the sirens came up. 7:42. Arthur Kane's head turned. "That's not possible." "Agent Cho's not there," Jack said. "She told me that. Nobody's coming. No van 2 blocks out. Just me and the recorder." "Then what is that?" "That's Bellhaven PD," Jack said, responding to a report of a home invasion in progress at this address called in at 7:15 from St. Anne's Hospital by a woman named Denise Park, who was told to make the call at exactly 7:15 no matter what she heard by her boss. Every head in the room turned to Victoria Hayes. And Victoria gray as ash, with a drain in her side, and 200 stitches in her, and her hand pressed flat against the wound, said, "Arthur, I've been in 4,000 meetings with you." "Victoria, I've watched you take apart 40 men," she said. "You always do the same thing. You give them everything, and then at the very end, when they're relieved, when they think it's over, you take the one thing back." Her chin came up. "You were always going to keep the girl. It was never in question. It's the only move you have." 7:44. "So I told Denise to call at 7:15, Victoria said, "not because I knew what would happen in this room, because I knew you." Arthur Kane stared at her. And then for the first and last time in his life, Arthur Kane looked afraid. "They can't come in," he said. "They can't come through that gate without—" "It's an open call for a child in danger," Victoria said. "Arthur, they can do anything they want." 7:46. Jack Carter was already moving. He went through the door and past 2 men who did not put a hand on him, because men who are paid on the 15th and the 30th do not lay hands on a civilian while sirens are coming up a private drive, and he hit the stairs 2 at a time. Second door on the left. He came through it, and a woman named Marguerite came up out of a chair with her hands raised, and Jack didn't even look at her. Lily was on the bed with a fan of playing cards in her hands. She looked up. "Daddy." And Jack Carter went down on his knees on the floor of Arthur Kane's guest bedroom, and his daughter hit him at a dead run, and he put both arms around her and held on and did not let go for 11 straight seconds. "You came," she said. "Told you I would." "I know," Lily said into his shoulder. "I told the man you would. He said you were coming, and I said I know." Jack couldn't answer. "Daddy, are you crying?" "Yeah, Bug." "How come?" "Because I'm tired," Jack said. "I'm real tired." 7:51. They came down the stairs together, Jack with his daughter on his hip like she was 3 again, and the front of that house was full of light and radios and men in vests. And Arthur Kane was still in his chair with a blanket on his knees, and a very young Belhaven officer was standing in front of him saying, "Sir, I need you to stay right there." And the old man was looking straight through him at Jack Carter, with an expression of absolute blank, uncomprehending fury. Jack stopped in the doorway. "Arthur?" The old man's eyes came up. "My juice box was apple," Jack said, and then he carried his daughter out. 8:04. Agent Dana Cho was standing at the bottom of the drive with her badge on a chain and her arms folded, and when she saw Jack come out with the kid, she closed her eyes and said something to herself that nobody heard. "You said you weren't coming," Jack said. "I lied," Cho said. "It's in the job description. How long have you been down here?" "Since 6:58, she said. "I had no probable cause, no warrant, and no authority. So I sat in a car at the bottom of a private drive, and I hoped a local unit would get a call." She looked up at the house. "Mr. Carter, I want to be extremely clear that everything about tonight is going to take me 9 months of paperwork." Jack handed her the recorder. She turned it over in her hand. "Is it on it?" "All of it." "It's not admissible." "I know," Jack said. "Play it anyway." 8:11. They played it in a car with the doors open. Cho listened to 4 minutes of it, and then stopped it, and got out of the car, and stood in the dark with both hands on the roof and her head down. When she came back, she said, "Mr. Carter, I've been doing this 11 years. "Yeah. I've never heard anything like that in my life." "No. He said he'd do it again." "Yeah," Jack said. Cho looked at the house. "You know it's still not a case," she said. "That's the truth, and I'm not going to lie to you standing here. 2-party state, private residence. Defense will have it suppressed inside a month, and any judge in this county will grant it." "I know." "Then what did you do this for?" And Jack Carter said, "Agent, I didn't come here to convict him. I came here to get my kid." 8:19. Gil Rourke talked for 6 hours the next morning. He gave them the wires, the shell, the routing, the 9 payments, and the name of the man who'd called him on the 15th and the 30th for 14 months, and Marcus Webb, who was already gone, decided that if he was going to prison anyway, he would not go there alone, and he gave them 41 pages of something he'd been keeping in a safe deposit box in a bank Arthur Kane had never set up for him. Because Marcus Webb had spent 22 years learning from Arthur Kane, and the first thing Arthur Kane had ever taught him was keep your own log. 11 days later, the recording was suppressed, exactly like Cho said. A judge threw it out in 9 minutes flat, and then, on a Thursday morning, it appeared on the website of a newspaper in Cleveland, Ohio, sourced to no one, and by noon it had been played 40 million times. Jack Carter never said where it came from. Neither did Victoria Hayes. Neither did a federal agent who had 9 months of paperwork ahead of her, and a clean conscience for the first time in 11 years. 14 months later. Arthur Kane died in a hospital bed in a facility 3 miles from a wing that no longer had his name on it. The foundation had dissolved. The business school had voted unanimously. There were 4 people at the service, and 2 of them were paid to be there. And a 19-year-old boy in Lorain, Ohio, whose father's name was Danny Reyes, did not go because he had a job that day, and because his father was not the kind of man who'd have gone either. 2 years later, Victoria Hayes did not rebuild the company. She broke it apart and sold it in 4 pieces and put every dollar that was hers into a fund that paid out to 11 families and 1 widow in Ohio. And then she resigned in a letter that was 90 words long and did not contain the word "unfortunately." The board tried to stop her. She let them try. Jack Carter got his license back on a Tuesday, which he thought was about right. He turned down the engineering job. He turned down 3 of them. He took a position with the state safety board inspecting plants at a third of the money because it meant that when a site lead somewhere in this country filed a flag on a Tuesday, there was a man on the other end who would read it. And Ray kept his bay open because Jack still came in Saturdays. He couldn't stop. Some days, Lily and Emma came with him, and they sat on the workbench and argued about everything the way girls do who have decided to be sisters without asking anybody's permission. Victoria came too eventually. It took a long time. It should have. There was no wedding. There was no moment. There was just a woman who showed up on a Saturday with 2 coffees and kept showing up for a year, and then 2, until one afternoon, Jack looked up from an engine and realized he'd stopped noticing she was there, and that this was the best thing that had happened to him in a decade. She never asked him to forgive her. That was how he knew she meant it. And on the last Saturday of that second summer, Emma Hayes, who was 10, now asked him the question straight out the way kids do, with no run-up at all. "Jack, do you ever wish you'd kept walking?" Jack put down the wrench. He thought about it honestly, because that was the only way he'd ever done anything. "No," he said. "Not even for a second." "For about half a second," Jack said. "On the stairs, before I knew who she was." "And then what?" And Jack Carter looked at that little girl, the one who'd stood in a parking garage with both hands over her mouth and screamed the 4 words that took a machine apart after 60 years, and he told her the truth. "And then you yelled," he said. 11 men died in Ohio because one old man moved a date by a single day, and for 9 years the whole world believed a lie because it was easier than looking. It came apart because a child screamed and a tired man on a staircase turned toward the sound instead of away. That's all it ever takes.